afternoon, everyone. If you're standing in back, why don't you come in and take a seat? So I'd like to welcome you to the U.S. Center. My name is Jenna Jaden. I'm a climate change specialist for the U.S. Agency for International Development, and I'll be the MC here this week. If you haven't been to the U.S. Center before, you should know that it is a public diplomacy effort put on by the State Department, which showcases efforts that the U.S. is engaged in, both domestically and abroad, that are aimed at combating and understanding climate change. We have a busy schedule, a full schedule for the rest of this week, tomorrow and Friday, as well as all of next week. So pick up a schedule on your way out and come check us out again. So this afternoon, our event is called REDD Plus Results, Real Stories from the Forest. We have several speakers. I will just be introducing the first speaker, who will MC the rest of the event. Our first speaker is Mr. Eric Postel, who is the Assistant Administrator for the U.S. Agency for International Development's Bureau for Economic Growth, Education, and Environment. He is also the founder of Pangea Partners, an investment banking consulting firm that has helped African countries create or improve their stock markets, and he is a former U.S. naval officer. So with that, I'll welcome Eric up.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Sit. Okay, there we go. Opportunity to talk about and spotlight some of the great REDD Plus work going on all around the world, of which there's many stories. So we have four outstanding presenters today who have information to talk about some of the things that they're doing. As you'll see, what they're doing in the different countries varies because different conditions on the ground require different approaches, obviously. Interspace, amongst the presentations, you'll see a series of REDD Plus updates and highlights on these screens. You saw some of them playing already, and they're going to cycle through our presentation. For those watching on the web, you can tweet questions for our panelists at the US Center, US_Center. After the presentation, we'll have a chance to answer questions and talk further. So before we get started with our panelists, I'd like to invite Mr. Trig Talley, the Deputy United States Special Envoy for Climate Change and the head of our delegation this week, to make a few introductory comments. Trig.
Thanks, everyone, and welcome to our center. I thought I'd just talk a little bit about REDD and what it means to us in the U.S. As some of you may know, there are negotiations going on right now on REDD, and we're hopeful that these negotiations are completed here in Warsaw. Guidance from the Framework Convention will help give needed clarity to everyone who is planning and trying to implement programs on the ground. Reducing deforestation and increasing our planet's ability to sequester carbon is one of the best means we have to combat climate change. REDD Plus is one of the tools by which we implement this goal, and as you'll hear today from our presenters, REDD Plus creates unique opportunities to build partnerships that are able to take bold, swift action now. I thought I'd take a minute to explain why REDD Plus matters to us. First, on mitigation, we know that deforestation and land use change today represent almost 1/5 of global greenhouse gas emissions. With agriculture, that number increases to nearly 1/3 of global emissions. And we also know that reducing deforestation and degradation can be cost-effective. It has biodiversity and other environmental benefits. Forest protection is about more than just climate change. Forests regulate water quality, prevent soil erosion, and are home to at least 80% of the world's terrestrial biodiversity. And we recognize that billions of people worldwide currently rely on forests for income and to fulfill basic needs. Indigenous and forest-dwelling people are an important part of the solution. When done correctly, REDD Plus includes these stewards of the forests and compensates them for being providers of an ecosystem service. Because of the value of REDD Plus, in 2010, the United States pledged $1 billion to REDD Plus for Fast Start finance. We've now surpassed the $1 billion mark and continue to fund REDD+ going forward. This funding addresses all three phases of REDD+. We're supporting countries to prepare strategies, we're supporting countries with technological issues such as monitoring of forests, and through entities such as the FCPF Carbon Fund, we're piloting the purchase of verified emission reductions. Now, we know that Framework Convention COPs are tended to focus very much on negotiations, and international agreement has been and will be critical to advancing REDD+. We also know that the real work is being done on the ground. While we are here developing text, people are advancing forest protection, indigenous people and community engagement, development of new financing options, and new monitoring technologies every day. The new State of the Forest carbon markets, published last week, shows that carbon offsets have to date helped protect more than 26 million hectares of forests in developing countries, an area larger than the DRC or Ecuador. That's quite impressive. REDD+ programs have generated work for thousands of people, drawn together lawmakers in developing countries around the world to craft policies and strategies, and garnered the interest of forward-thinking companies concerned with their footprint and their impact. REDD+ is not a theoretical concept. It is happening every day, and so we are turning to highlight some of the innovative examples that we have here today from our presenters. Thanks very much, and I'll turn over to Eric now.
So obviously, in the case of USAID, we work in many countries all around the world, and couldn't possibly encapsulate them during this sort of discussion. And then there's our partners who have many projects of their own. So before hearing from those, I'll just give two examples of the things that we're trying to do at USAID. One is in Indonesia, where obviously there's a huge forest, and they at the same time face many development pressures. We have a forestry and climate support project going there in 8 landscapes covering 11 million hectares on 3 islands, Papua, Kalimantan, and Sumatra. What we're trying to do is work with local people, district governments, businesses to improve the management right now of the first 1 million hectares, and hopefully expanding beyond that to 3 million, involving the natural forest and peatland. So we hope to provide 12,000 forest-dependent beneficiaries with new opportunities through that effort, as well as helping to preserve the forests. Also, I want to mention our Tropical Forest 2020, which is a relatively new public-private partnership involving government, civil society, and business stakeholders. The businesses have come together through something called the Consumer Goods Forum that you all may know about. It's a global network of 400 companies from all over the world who collectively represent more than $3 trillion in sales every year. The commitment of the Alliance is to address the drivers of deforestation involved in 4 commodities, 4 value chains: palm oil, soy, beef, and pulp and paper. So bringing all those parties together, I think, is a new step forward in trying to make good progress. And we're now rapidly being joined by many other parties, including the governments of the Netherlands, Norway, United Kingdom, plus major NGOs like World Resources Institute, Conservation International, and the IDH Sustainable Trade Initiative. And we're expecting a number of other countries and local NGOs in many developing countries to join as well. So those are just a couple of the examples of the way we're working, but now we get to the main course, which is our presenters to talk about their many successes. And first up will be Mr. Alejandrino Sabuco from the Philippines. He's the officer in charge of the Economic Analysis section in the Forest Management Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. He's been working as an economist in that bureau since 1987 and heads this Economic Analysis section of the bureau. And he's a member of the REDD+ Working Group on Sustainable Financing and Resource Allocation and Management. As an economist, he supervises studies on the economics of forestry, the supply and demand, price, and welfare analysis, and also a contributor to drafting the Philippine National REDD Plus strategy. He has a master's in public management from the University of Philippines Open University. With that, Mr. Cebu, thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to present to you our updates on REDD Plus activities in the Philippines, specifically those related under the UN REDD program and other activities that are being done by our government in partnership with other partners. So, excuse me. Okay. 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 Under the UN REDD program, we are able to organize an interim national REDD Plus national multi-stakeholder REDD Plus Council, and we were able to draft its manual of operations. So when you say multi-sectoral, it includes other government agencies, especially the NCIP, or the Organization for the Indigenous Peoples. We have also promoted awareness of stakeholders on REDD Plus through REDD 0101. It's a briefing of stakeholders on what REDD Plus is all about. We also have the REDD Hour, where we informally talk about REDD in our office, and we also had REDD road shows. This was done in partnership with our NGO partners. Okay. So we have also prepared training packages for REDD Plus practitioners and drafted the pre-final REDD Plus safeguards framework, protocols, monitoring framework, criteria, and forest indicators. This was also done in partnership with our Ateneo School of Government, also one of our active partners in REDD Plus with regards to safeguards. So under the UN REDD program, it also facilitated discussions on MRV, such as forest stratification, forest monitoring, and inventory data analysis. Okay. So, with regards to other REDD Plus related initiatives, we have enhanced the technical capacity of DNR personnel. DNR is the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Under the DNR USAID United States Forest Office Partnership for Sustainable Forest Management. So under this activity or project, we were able to train DNR people, and there were 30 people who were trained in remote sensing and other GIS specialization, and we're now using it. So especially now that we are now analyzing the latest data on forest cover, but we have not yet released it. We're still analyzing it, and those people that were trained under this partnership with the USAID and USFS are now doing those things for us. So we have also, for the government of the Philippines, under our own funding, we were able to do forest land boundary delineation in 70 out of 80 provinces, covering 80,845 kilometers. So before, the forest boundary was just a line. It's just a line on the map. Now we are now able to delineate them on the ground. So having this length of boundary, 80,845 kilometers, just shows how difficult it is to protect our forests because of that very long boundary. So under the National Greening Program, we were able to, so far, to plant 85% of the target 300,000 hectares for this year. So that was about 255,000 hectares. 10 years previous to 2011, the average reforestation accomplishment was just around 27,000 hectares per year. So we have invested a lot in terms of regreening or reforesting our denuded lands. So under this National Greening Program, these are all geotagged. All the plantations are geotagged. This is also due to the capacity training that were provided by the partnership with USAID and USFS. So we have also drafted policy to place NGP sites outside existing tenured areas under secure tenure arrangements with forest communities. So the new forest cover data will be released soon, hopefully this December. But we are now in the process of analyzing those data. So with this new land cover data, we will be able to detect forest cover change in specific areas. When doing REDD Plus 2 years ago, we do not know what specific provinces have this deforestation or the degradation. But now we cannot pinpoint how much is being deforested for each province. We can do that now. So it's also an input in physical and development planning at national to local levels. It's also useful for GHP inventories for land use change, and forestry and REDD Plus nationally and in various geographic locations in the country. So it is also useful in the conduct of forest resources accounting and valuation. Right now we are also doing this forest resources accounting and evaluation, hoping that we can use this as basis for payments for environmental services for our forests in the country. So that's all for that. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Mr. Victor Kabengele Wakadilu from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's an economist by background, by training, and he is the country's national REDD Plus coordinator. He's a member of the CDM Executive Board and a member of the negotiating team to this COP. He's also the DRC focal point for South-South cooperation on these matters. So without further ado, Mr. Kadil.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, I've been asked to make a presentation, a short presentation on the work being done in DRC for the time being, especially by USAID CARPE. As you know, CARPE is working in a central region, COMIFAC region specifically, for many years, doing a lot of work on conservation, promotion of REDD activities. And in DRC specifically is working with a lot of ONGs. Some of them I will list them there, and I will present you a summary of the activity they are doing there. So The implementation partners, the partners CARP is working with in DRC. You got a Wildlife Conservation Society, which is working in one of the government REDD project pilot, like we say, in Mombasa region. The project is to improve is including the Ituri, Ipulu, Aru landscape, and the objective is to reduce the deforestation caused by growing population migration, because we've got a lot of people coming from the Kivu region after with this, because it's a conflict region, and a lot of people are moving from there to Mombasa, and you got a growing population there, and WCS working with CARP want to put in place a strategy to reduce deforestation and make also agriculture settlement in this area of approximately 10,000 hectares of site. Also, WCS is working with Zoological Society of London and Eco Kivu in the Virunga area to introduce what you call the green cacao and this kind of forestry activities. Other partner of implementation, you got African African Wildlife Foundation, AWF, including other partners like ONF, CIAT, and University of Maryland. They have been developing a strategy for sustainable land use planning for the conservation of biodiversity and improvement of livelihood for local community in the Maringa, Lopori, Wamba landscape. It's a very big landscape. And two major activities there are related to the climate, reduction of greenhouse emission from deforestation, and also carbon sequestration through the establishment of agroforestry. You got two activities being implemented there. Other partner of implementation, you got the Bonobo Conservation Initiative, led to create a network of community-based management zone and conservation also, covering almost 13 million hectares, which provide habitat to bonobos. As you know, that bonobo is a species in danger, and is protected species of kind of primate, if I can say like that. And in fact, they want to reduce almost 4 million tons of COD through 30 years to be sold to the CDM mechanism. Another partner of implementation is in the area of Kivu with the Jatropha plantations being implemented by Carbon to Green and Bioenergy Development Company. The aim of this activity is to generate 3.2 million of COD by 2038 to sell to the clean development mechanism, and to produce also 24 million of liters of biofuel each year. And also the project goals is to create jobs increase forest cover, restore soil, produce electricity, and ultimately empower communities. We got also Jadora. Jadora is helping a company, a private company, Safbois, to reduce the logging activities in favor of carbon offset generation by developing a REDD project in the Oriental Province, particularly in the area of Isangi. That project is one of the 7 projects the government wants to pilot as well. And the last of the partners, we got WWF, Eco Makala, is working in the region of Goma, around Goma, to protect the Virunga National Park by reducing by 15% the deforestation. This will be completed through the planting of at least 2,000 hectares of buffer of micro forest plantation over 5 years. So and the project is to give also a job to the population, improving what we call energy use, and also diminishing greenhouse emissions. That is almost the main partners working with CARPE in DRC. What kind of activities CARPE is doing in DRC? We can summarize them by saying that they are working mainly in the landscape use, land planning. They are working in improving giving the alternative livelihood to the population and improving the livelihood by making sure that by when you do the conservation, to get it to get the good result, you have to take care also of the population surrounding the conservation area. Other activities is promotion of the national policy and reform and agenda for the conservation. As you know that you got a lot of reform to be undertaken in DRC, especially in the forest sector. For example, the forest law is old, is from 2002, and it has to be updated in order to the REDD to get to be implemented correctly. The same for the agriculture code as well. So there is a lot of laws which has to be reformed. Land tenure has to be reformed as well. So CARPE is working in this sense with all these implementation partners. Also, CARPE is working on the forest cover monitoring, especially with FACET, or this image we need to cover and to follow the trend of the forest in DRC, and the FACET give a lot of data which help to set the forest reference level for DRC. That is what I can say. Lesson learned is very important to get the political leadership involved at a different level, national level and local level also. The role of the community is very, very important, and the engagement also. You can't do anything in a rural area in the REDD process if the local communities are not engaged, are not committed. Another important lesson is the role of the coordination. Of course, you got a lot of ONGs, you got provincial government, you got all the administration itself, so you have to make that the coordination is well done, and also, and very important also, capacity building, because all this we are talking about is to improve the livelihood, to improve the condition of the population, but with their engagement and making sure that they are part of the business, and that when tomorrow the project, if I can say, stopped, then there is what I can say durability in the work we have undertaken. But to make sure that there will be durability, people must have the capacity to carry on the job which has been started with partners. That is very important. I thank you very much for your attention.
So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Christiana Eringhaus. She is an advisor on forests and climate change at the German KfW Development Bank. She's a team member of the German REDD Early Movers Program and advises the BMZ on the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, specifically the Carbon Fund. Previously, Dr. Eringhaus worked as a GIZ advisor to the Amazon Fund in Brazil and as a researcher for CIFOR. She has many years of field experience in the Amazon Basin and holds a PhD from the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. Dr. Eringhaus.
Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here and present the German REDD Early Movers Program to you. This global program is financed by the German Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development and is jointly implemented by the German Development Bank KfW and GIZ, the Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, for those who speak German. In this quick presentation, thank you. In this quick presentation, I will introduce you to the REDD Early Movers Program as a whole and illustrate it with the example of the first early mover of Acre in the southwestern Amazon in Brazil. Oops. Okay. The REDD Early Movers Program supports pioneers of forest conservation and rewards those countries or jurisdictions that have moved early and invested into forest conservation and have already taken risks and independent actions towards reducing deforestation. The REDD Early Movers Program provides bridging finance in the REDD interim phase, contributing to closing the funding gap. In this sense, it also works towards countering frustrations with, for some early movers with a relatively slow pace at the international REDD process, showing that there are indeed rewards for reduced emissions from deforestation. The REDD Early Movers Program approaches for results-based payments are based on exchange for verified emissions reductions at the national and subnational scale, mostly using jurisdictional approaches. The REDD Early Movers Program is structured quite flexibly, and in this sense is able to work with different kinds of partners and is also welcome to other donors. Oops, sorry, I'm slow. The REDD Early Movers Program has 3 different modalities. It's targeted mostly for ex-post results-based payments, as is the case of Acre, our first early mover. It also has a ex-ante incentive payments modality, which targets those countries or states that are almost there, that can have results-based payment systems in the near foreseeable future. Finally, there is a third modality, which is basically the REDD readiness modality, which provides technical, very targeted technical assistance instruments and tool for readiness. In that case, that is GIZ that carries this out and is really targeted towards making the last steps towards results-based payment systems. Here's an illustration of how the REDD Early Movers program operates. It is based on results-based payments at the jurisdictional or national scale, which are delivered on the basis of conservative proxy indicators and robust baselines within an established MRV system. The payments are at the jurisdictional level. However, the agreed upon benefit sharing scheme delivers benefits, or it's aimed to deliver benefits both at areas where deforestation occurs, but also at forested area where forest-dependent communities live. The REDD philosophy is actually quite simple. The first one is keeping it simple. We all know that REDD gets complicated very quickly, and the REDD Early Movers programs aims at keeping it as simple as possible and complicating it if necessary along the way. It also aims at keeping or supporting programs that are politically sustainable. What do we mean by that? It means that it has a strong stakeholder participation and allows or requires partners to demonstrate high political will and political buy-in. It also aims at being operationally quickly able to operationally benefit sharing plans, for instance. So early movers generally already have established programs which can channel REDD Early Movers funds to different stakeholder groups or different programs quickly, and not only build them up once the transactions occur. The REDD Early Movers program also is flexible for gradual improvement. For instance, we start, for instance, with just MRV on deforestation, but in the course of a REDD Early Movers program, degradation can be incorporated. On the beginning, the program starts with just a few benefit sharing programs which can be incorporate new programs as the REDD Early Movers program partnership goes along. I'd also like to stress that the REDD Early Mover programs works mostly at the national and jurisdictional scale. It's not a project-based approach. It is not aimed at, we do not seek to acquire offsets or marketable credits. Instead, REM retires compensated emissions reductions. In the larger context, it aims to promote REDD in line with international climate negotiations and not to preempt them. And the focus is on REDD and not on REDD+. With this, I finish this first part on REDD in general, and let's go to the example of Acre. Who of you has already been to Acre? Oh, a few. It's not completely new. Brazilians mostly in the past used to say, Acre, where's that? This is the end of the world. But Acre has actually gained some international notoriety, even being such a small place in the southwestern Amazon. I myself was fortunate enough to spend many years of my life as a researcher working in Acre. So I'm very happy that years after finishing to work there, I can re-encounter Acre through this REDD Early Mover program, and it's very dear to my heart, and I'm very proud that Acre is the first early mover. So let's see. So the state of Acre has a long history of engagement with forests. Some of you might recall the protests around Chico Mendes. Since the early 2000s, Acre has been investing into forest conservation and reduced deforestation. So it's really been an early mover before REDD was even on the table. This is a little complicated with looking back there. So some of the milestones that Acre has gone through, in 2009 it already established a deforestation reduction plan. It has established the system for incentives for environmental services, which is the legal basis for REDD in Acre, but it also has a very sophisticated MRV system, which is in line with national plans, a national MRV system. It has created institutions such as the State Climate Institute, and many other instruments and institutions and processes and policies. And with this, it has also achieved early success in reducing deforestation. And with this, it's for us really the quintessential early mover and very appropriate to be the first partner in the REDD Early Movers program. So the ACRE approach, in part because it started working on this before REDD as a concept was on the table, is very holistic and integrative. It combines measures to reduce deforestation with measures to increase the value to standing forest, working on, in many different ways, approaches to combat deforestation on the agricultural frontier, but also fostering livelihoods in forested areas. So I would like to finish pointing out some of the characteristics of REDD Early Movers in ACRE, just to give you an idea how it concretely could look like. First of all, there's in the Amazon, in ACRE, there is coherence with the national plan to reduce deforestation in Amazon. There's always a concern when you work at the subnational jurisdictional scale. ACRE has an advanced MRV system which is in line with the national MRV system. In the case of ACRE, our contract is for 2012 and 2015, up to 16 million euros. The ACRE has a very innovative, interesting approach of benefit sharing, which we support. It's called the stock and flow approach. Unfortunately, I can't tell you more about it right now, but if you're interested in discussion, we can talk about it. It rewards both forest-based communities that protect forests, but also channels funds to the drivers, to combat the drivers of deforestation. It's open to successive development and sophistication. And so for instance, in the beginning, there are only 2 benefit sharing programs, but as time goes on, new programs such as cattle ranching and programs that address cattle ranching are incorporated. And now with the last characteristic that I like to point out, it's very important to us. For every ton of carbon that the REDD Early Mover program compensates, ACRE retires an additional ton of carbon. For us, this is a very important signal of own contribution of political will, and is also a way to reduce the complexities of MRV by using, not only using conservative proxy estimates, but also showing the strong commitment to reducing emissions in the Amazon. So, the ACRE case is the first early mover. We hope that there are more to come. We are currently negotiating with Ecuador, together with Norway, and also started conversations with Colombia. But the program is global and aims also to work in other continents, but we're still working on that. What we are trying to do here is to contribute to REDD on the ground, rewarding those REDD pioneers that have already shown action on the ground, have already contributed to made significant investments, and are waiting for these rewards. And we want to show that there is interest, donor interest, and that REDD is actually already happening. So for those of you interested in knowing more of the REDD Early Mover program, I brought some brochures here, also on the BMZ website. There's comprehensive materials, but you can also contact the team for further information. With this, I thank you, and we can discuss later with the other colleagues.
And Dr. Eringhaus mentioned the discussions with Colombia, so that's a perfect segue to our next speaker, Mr. Ivan Dario Valencia Rodriguez, who is the advisor in the Office of International Affairs at the Ministry of the Environment and Sustainable Development in Colombia. He is the REDD Plus negotiator for Colombia and also manages donor relations for REDD Plus Finance. With he has a dual master's degree in environmental policy and sustainable development and in conservation biology from the University of Maryland, and has a wide-ranging work experience at the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, WWF, the GEF Evaluation Office and the Humboldt Institute for Biodiversity Research in Colombia. Mr. Rodriguez. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to the U.S. government for this invitation to participate in this side event. It's a pleasure to share with you some of our progress in the past two years. I was instructed to be extremely brief, so my presentation is extremely brief, but hopefully very substantive. Next. So I just want to come to you with two main things that happen on the ground, and I want to highlight only two because, as you know, REDD is still 90% process and 10% things happening on the ground, actually implementation, because a lot of discussions are still going on, a lot of funding is still coming through or about to come through. Countries are preparing their strategies, but things are nonetheless happening, and we were very happy to report this year, that for 2011 and 2012, on an annualized basis, we had a reduction in deforestation rates nationwide in our country from an average of 238,000 hectares per year in the period 2005 to 2010 to 148,000 hectares per year in the last 2 years. So this is quite a significant reduction, and it's a very welcome thing. And what has happened? So we are finding out. So of course we cannot claim that all of it has been due to our governmental efforts, but we must be doing something right, or we must not be doing everything wrong, because things are changing in a positive direction. And just like to highlight briefly, I don't know if there's a pointer in here. So just to kind of disaggregate the results, you can see the areas in red. So the areas in red are areas that were deforested in these 2 years, and so you can clearly see that there's a concentration of those in the northwestern part of the Amazon, what we know, departments of Caquetá, Guaviare, and Putumayo, and that's like our main deforestation frontier due to cattle ranching, illicit crops, and illegal logging for the most part. So that's where actually the share of deforestation has grown in that area, although there was a reduction still comparatively to the past 5 years. In the Pacific, we have extremely good news. Deforestation almost ground to a halt in this past 2 years. And we do believe there's a good relationship with some increased enforcement, particularly of logging, and the fact that some of the threats stopped, like palm oil expansion in that region. We still have problems in the Caribbean and northern Andes, as you see in the upper half part of it. But in general, we see a declining trend, and so this is a very good starting point for a lot of institutionalized REDD efforts. But part of what we're doing is trying to understand what has happened in each jurisdiction. Just for everybody's information, Colombia has a decentralized environmental enforcement governance by what we know as regional autonomous corporations, and they depend on the Ministry of Environment for policy guidelines and the law, but they are autonomous in budget and their activities, and we have 33 of them, and so we are researching what each of them has done and trying to understand the progress in different jurisdictions, because we can really, this is a good example of how different the regions are in respect to deforestation. In the Pacific, as I told you, it was extremely limited. It's a very, as you know, highly a very wet area, very limited cattle ranching, which is the main driver in the rest of the country. In the Amazon, we're starting to see a cattle ranching boom, like in a more agribusiness kind of scale, which is worrisome from a deforestation perspective. And we also see some agricultural expansion in the llanos in the border with Venezuela. And in the Caribbean, the situation is very concerning because not because of area of forest being lost, but because of percentage of forest being lost. Is the area that has the least coverage of forest, and actually dry forest, which is our most threatened ecosystem, is still being logged. So this is to show the highly differentiated nature of our regions and the fact that we need to tackle this in different ways. But it's a very good starting point, so I wanted to give you those good news because we do need to hear good news in this context so that things are working and we must be doing something right. So the next big thing, the last, but extremely significant to us, is the expansion of Chiribiquete National Park. And you can see, maybe I go back, you can see where it is in the Amazon, in the center of the Amazon, more or less. So it's around that area. So as you can see, if you think of a trend, it will be very threatening in the near future if deforestation trends continue. So this park, the original area, which is in green, the expanded area, which is in pink, is now the largest protected area in Colombia, almost the size of Belgium, 28,000 square kilometers. And it was extremely significant to have a park this size being expanded in this day and age. These stories are much harder to come by now because like land is being titled to all different kinds of uses. So for us it's extremely significant. This is what we call also the heart of the Amazon in Colombia. Is the westernmost part of the Guyana Shield, and it's pretty much pristine and inaccessible due to the tepuis that hinder navigation in the rivers, and it has uncontacted indigenous peoples as well as a stunning biodiversity, and hasn't been researched in, it's the most, I would say it's the most remote place in the country. So also to highlight, this was a process that has taken 2 to almost 3 years. We see here the declaration and the ceremony of expansion with Parks Director Julia Miranda, whom a lot of you may know, the former Minister Juan Gabriel Uribe, and President Juan Manuel Santos. So this was in August this year. And this is part of our commitment to REDD+. If you recall, in Cancun, we actually inscribed as part of our commitments in Cancun and in Copenhagen the increasing of protected areas as a way to contribute to REDD+. A lot of people do not associate protected areas to REDD, but it's in fact an important key piece of our strategy to complement the system. It still has gaps, and this is really the key part to complement it in the Amazon, and we feel it's a great achievement. There was in the process of expansion, it took more than 3 or almost 3 years, because we needed to undertake the necessary scientific studies. I mean, there's a very well-developed protocol to expand national parks, but also undertake all the prior informed consent needed from indigenous peoples that are in the resguardos, in the reservations that are in yellow. So there were consultations with all of them to get to agreements on the expansion of the park, being the expansion in a way qualifying for this FPIC due to that it would affect directly the indigenous peoples. So after a very intensive process of consultation with them in conjunction with the Ministry of the Interior, so we successfully signed agreements and the park was expanded. So really with this we're putting this as a center of a REDD strategy for the Amazon. The Amazon region is the priority for REDD Plus implementation in Colombia, and with this starting point to protect the surrounding area, we are going to use all the instruments in REDD Plus and including of course international funding that would help us cover this. And Christian mentioned that we're in conversations with Germany and Norway, and we're advancing a lot with them, and we're very pleased about that, and we hope to share more good news in the near future. So I'd just like to leave you with some pictures. I don't know if you can click on, oh no. There was a way to click on the picture. So this is the tepuis in the middle of Chiribiquete. So that's what happened in the field. We've had a lot of non-field stories of trying to raise finance for REDD and advancing in our strategy, in our MRV system. But we wanted some field stories, and these are our most important ones. Can you? No? Well, sorry. That I had a link to some slideshow that's on the internet, but apologies for not being able to show it. But please search for Chiribiquete on the internet, and you will see. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll ask our speakers to come up to the chairs and take some questions. So we've just covered 3 continents, multiple official donors, governments, and a wide range of NGOs. And just think that's like one branch of one tree of the whole forest endeavor. So it's amazing what things are going on. So in the interest of time, what I think we'll do is we'll take three or four questions as a group. I'd ask anybody with questions to identify yourself and your organization, and I'll ask our speakers to just listen to the questions, and then they can pick whichever ones they want to answer, and I bet collectively we'll cover them all. So who'd like to be first? There's one, and if others want to raise their hand, we'll start the mics moving to position.
Hello, thank you very much for putting on this event and these great stories and information. I have a question for Christian about the REDD early movers, and you explained, and I've seen that ACRE is really a leader, and certainly on the safeguards issue, they have developed their program with strong stakeholder support, and they are developing a safeguard information system, providing information, and it's based on the REDD social and environmental standards that I work with. And Ecuador is also very dedicated to safeguards and providing information. Do you have any requirements? Would you say that you prioritize countries with good information on how safeguards are addressed and respected? And what are the safeguards requirements for countries to be eligible for REDD early movers?
And what's your organization?
Oh, sorry, I'm Joanna Durbin of the Climate Community and Biodiversity Alliance, CCBA.
Thank you. Other questions? Well, so while some are thinking, maybe Christian, you could answer that one.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. I didn't mention it, but there are eligibility criteria for REDD early movers, and they are also in the brochure and online. And one of them is demonstrated participation processes and safeguard information systems. We don't have a particular system as a requirement because we feel that they should be locally determined and grown and in line with national strategies. However, we do promote also the German approaches to human rights, including FPIC and things like that. So we do put a lot of value on safeguards, on safeguard information systems and demonstrated participatory processes.
Other questions? Really? Yes, sir. Yeah, they'll bring it.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Josh Kempinski from Fauna and Flora International. I just had a question with regarding Colombia. I think it was really interesting about protected area gazettement or expanding protected areas as part of your national REDD strategy. It's not often something that you hear about, and I've come up against some conflict when I've tried to introduce that same sort of idea. So it's quite interesting that what you were saying there. And I just wondered, within sort of calling that protected area work as part of your REDD strategy, are you actually calculating, emissions avoided from the protected area expansion, or is it not being included in the REDD carbon accounting?
Thanks for the question. Yes, we do include, of course, the carbon in our reference level and in our MRV system, our National Forest Monitoring System. We do have, of course, count the carbon in forested protected areas. So it is part, and if there's any deforestation in protected areas, it's also accounted. There is, of course. We have seen through our analysis that protected areas are indeed very important tools in stopping deforestation, or at least substantially reducing it, and there's a clear difference in rates of deforestation in areas outside and inside protected areas. We've seen that. That's not to say that they're not areas with problems, and they are, in particular in that region close to in the northwest Amazon. So they are part of our REDD strategy in that way. There's another, however, the main strategy is the strategy of expansion, of consolidation of the national protected area system, which there's another initiative called Naturally Colombia, which aims to increase the representatives of all ecosystems that are not particularly well represented right now, and one of them is dry forests. So as I said, in the Caribbean region, in the middle of the country, in the Magdalena Valley, that happens. They may not be very significant in terms of carbon, but they are in terms of biodiversity, and also in the llanos, in the eastern plains. That's also another area with low representativeness, and we place emphasis on connectivity of protected areas, but we do see as a very important tool also because of what I said of the land tenure security that they provide. We understand that most of the potential, particularly in the Amazon, you can say there's not a lot of room to expand protected areas the size of Chiribiquete, but there's still a lot of room for regional protected areas, local jurisdiction protected areas of smaller size in different areas of the country.
So if there's a final question from the audience, I was happy to take it, sir.
Chris Meyer from EDF. I think the DRC, you have a lot of different initiatives happening in your country, a lot of different projects. I was wondering how the federal government is going to be regulating or understanding all the different reference levels from these different projects, and ensuring that we're not going over producing a lot of hire, for example, and that in addition to also receiving some of the benefits and being able to finance all the activities you need to do to have a national program, and do all the necessary analysis and reporting, etc.
Thank you for the question. The government, in fact, is put in place what we call the National Coordination, REDD coordination. This entity, depending of the Ministry of Environment, coordinate all the REDD projects in the country. And we got the REDD register, which has to register all projects coming in the country. There's an online process, so you can look at it and find all the REDD project being implemented in the country. Besides this, we put in place also what we call the National REDD Fund, which gonna collect all the money coming from all sources, It can be public, private, multilateral, bilateral, and so on, to make sure that all to help to implement the REDD project in the country. For example, now we got underway 6 pilot projects financed by the Congo Basin Fund, where United States is part of the funder. You got also UK, Norway. So these projects are coordinated. Some of them are listed them on the presentation, are coordinated by the National Health Coordination. The reason why I'm talking about the critical role of the coordination. If there is no coordination, everything can be, and then we can trace all the financing coming into the country. Is the reason why we put also, like I say, this financial branch of the strategy, national strategy, because we got also our national REDD strategy, which is the let's say the main outcome of our preparation phase, because DRC is almost finalizing its preparation phase and entering in the investment phase. So you got our national strategy with the national REDD fund, which I hope can help us to move the process forward. Thank you.
So thank you all very much for your interest. Please join me in thanking all 4 panelists for their very busy folks, and they took time to prepare these excellent presentations and to be here with us today. So thank you all very much. And thank you for your interest.
And please don't forget to grab a schedule on your way out. We have a full schedule of events all of next week, as well as tomorrow and Friday, including another REDD Plus event on Monday at 11 o'clock on Advances in a Success Story in Colombia.